ain't gonna let Marjorie grieve. I'm gonna, yeah, marching. Well, ain't gonna let Trump, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, ain't gonna let Trump turn me around. I'm gonna, yeah, marching. Yeah, ain't gonna let nobody. Oh, no. Oh, no. Ain't gonna let nobody. I'm gonna, yeah, marching. Thank you for helping me out this morning. Yeah.
So one advantage to being a child of the civil rights is that you have access to everything you had in the civil rights. So when I was about to tell my auntie that we're going to go and proceed, she gave me the look and we went another song. That's how it goes. So next coming up is my mother, Mrs. Sherrod. And she ain't camouflage, that means she ready for battle, but she always ready for battle.
Good morning, everybody. I've been looking forward to this day for a long time. And as I've continued to work through the years, there are so many people who need to be recognized for the work that they did in the earlier years and some who continue on today. And I kept thinking, how can we honor that? So when we acquired this property, someone was surprised the other day when I said, we didn't know the history of this land when it was acquired. We bought it because, well, we definitely didn't want to go back to Lee County. They took everything and ran us out of there. I can remember we still had a vehicle that was registered in Lee County, and they refused, and this was right around the time of the loss. They refused to renew the tag for that county. So when we started looking, Lee County was not an option for us. But because we had gotten up in age, we didn't want land that was a long way away from us. And Philip Davis, Irma's son, worked for FedEx. So he was making deliveries out here at this farm and found that it was on the market. So at that time, we were looking at another piece of property in Dougherty County. So we decided to come out here and look. The salesman was from Tallahassee, so he didn't know our history, right? I think if he had been from Albany, we wouldn't have been able to get the land. So we you see that bird wagon out there with the sign on it? We were on that bird wagon that Sunday morning, just going all over this place. And as we were looking, the salesman kept saying, just put an offer on it. The corporation is holding it. They're ready to get rid of it. See, when the previous owner, he was very rich, he invented the system we used to buy fuel at the pump. So he was getting lots of money. He spent $3 million just restoring that house that you see there. So when he died, they put it on the market at $21 million. The Sunday morning we came out here to look, they had dropped the price to 6.9. And he just kept saying to all of us, but my husband responded, because he said, well, see if they'll take $5 million for it. The next day, they let us know they would take $5 million. But they didn't want to include all of the equipment. And then I had a problem with antebellum. Why would we want that? So because I objected so much, we got a consultant to come in to help us make a decision between this property and the other property we were looking at. And when he made his report, he said, you have to get Cypress Pond because of all of the improvements. He said, but you can get it for less than $5 million and make them include the equipment. So we started hardballing and finally got everything, including the equipment, for $4.5 million. Yeah. Remember, I told you he spent $3 million just on this house. He ordered material from wherever the best material was. That's where he got it from. So I often say they took 6,000 acres from us, and God gave us a plantation intact. So it was only when I was working on my book, and there was a writer out of New York working with me, that we found, she sent me a text and said, that place has some history, and she gave us a little of that history. That's when we started learning the history of this property. It was once owned by the largest slave owner and the wealthiest man in the state of Georgia. Okay. And he had 9 plantations, but held the largest number of slaves at this site. So we actually have a copy of an ad where 150 slaves were being sold at the courthouse in Albany on December the 29th, 1859. And this was after the death of Hartwell Hill Tarver and his son, Paul Tarver. So we know that there are still many descendants in this area from those slaves. We haven't had a lot of time to do a lot of research, but we were able to find, the historian found one family really quick. I found the other one. Judge Herbert Phipps is a direct descendant from a slave at this plantation. His great-great-grandmother was a slave here. Her name was Mary Jane. The overseer of, I'm trying to say his name all the time, but Phipps was the last name. It was Littleton Phipps, was his great-great-grandfather. Now, during slavery, when you look at the 1860 census, they showed Littleton Phipps owning about 5 slaves. That was actually Mary Jane and the children. But after slavery ended, they married and had a total of 8 children. So Judge Herbert Phipps is a direct descendant of a slave from this plantation. And then there was a young slave born in 1846 who took the last name of the owners, Tarver. And I kept doing the research. So Aunt Josie, you see one of her, she's being honored here. She is a direct descendant of a slave from this plantation through the Tarver person, I can't think of his first name now, who was born in 1866. Our goal is to locate as many descendants as we can from that 150 slaves. And then our goal is we look at this place, lots of training goes on here, and you'll see, for those of you who take the tour, but we also look at it as a place to heal. We ought to be able to come on these grounds and connect spiritually with ancestors who were here and know that this is a safe place. So that we want you to feel good about being on these grounds and being a part of this effort. So we're starting with the first 11. But we want to come back. We've been trying to figure out, is it a wall that we put up where a lot of the other names, because there are only so many roads and buildings here on the property. But is it a wall with names or whatever it is? We've got to figure it out. But each year we plan to add to the list of people who fought in all of these counties around here in the civil rights movement and never got recognized for the efforts they made. You know, so many people lost their homes, they lost land, and we need to honor that. Our children need to honor that. And then to be able to have the film that we had last night, talking about heirs property. You know, this is one of the main ways we have lost land, and we don't need to lose anymore. So our children need to be able to understand what it means to connect with the land. I'm hoping a lot of them can come to this site and connect with family and connect with our history and connect in ways that will cause them to try to continue the fight that we've been on all of these years. You know, people refer to the movement as a certain number of years. And I don't know when those years ended, but I know I'm still on the fight. And when you see some of the things that are happening today, we all need to be joining the fight, because there's an effort to take back everything we have gained as a people. My worry is that because we could get the civil rights movement started back in the early 60s, because we were all in, whether you were a doctor, lawyer, whatever, you were in the same boat with everyone who was a farm worker. So it was easier in some ways to organize. But now we all feel we've made it. We've forgotten how to reach back and help others. See, that's what I was taught. You learn, my fourth grade teacher is here. Can you stand? Where is she? See, I know it's Miss Broadway. She has another name now. You know, we were all taught to reach back and help somebody else. We need to instill that in our children now. It's the only way we're going to help our folks to try to get over and past some of the things that are happening now. So I didn't mean to give a full speech. I'm supposed to be welcoming you. But it's hard for me to get up and not say some of the things that have been on my mind forever. So thank you.
Man's hand won't tear a prison down, a prison down. Two men's hands can tear a prison down, prison down. But if 2 and 2 and 50 makes a million.
That ain't y'all, Sherrod.
We'll see that day come around. Yeah. I said to remember my father. Yeah. I'm not the speakers like my mom and my brother. But my daddy believed in. My daddy believed in family. Loving, not hating. Pulling together and starting something for all. Now, if we had just done that in the beginning, in the 60s, and stayed in, look what could have and would have happened. It could have been big. And it still can be big through our children, because after you reach the age 50, and I haven't gotten there yet, but my brother has. Then you start thinking about the children and what you leave behind and who and what we can do to savage things for history for our kids. So they won't end up on the streets. So they won't end up fighting and selling dope and those things. My tribute for my daddy is this, to leave you with this. Start loving. Stop hating and trying to be all for self. He gave his life.
Yeah,
And I can stand here and say that.
yeah, you can.
Mm.
Yeah.
And with a whole heart, I can stand here and say that and mean it.
Yeah.
That he gave his life for you and me.
Yeah.
And if you don't remember anything else, fight for our children. Fight for yourselves. Let's have something and go out of here with a boom.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Miss Dr. Russia Sherrod. I'm going to ask real quick Sean Mulkey to come present something real quick to Mrs. Sherrod, which was not on the program, and it's really hard to bring any surprise on my mama. I could do a dissertation about 45 minutes on that one, but we're going to keep it moving. It's era painting, so I'll let Sean, you going to speak this time?
I'll say this.
All right. Mr. Sean Mulkey.
How y'all doing? I'm a little nervous. I'm not big on public speaking, but just bear with me. I did this piece back in, I want to say, the 2011, 2012. I was personally moved by everything that happened back in the civil rights movement, and I wanted to highlight, and it's not all of them, but I just wanted to highlight certain points within the civil rights movement, and I call this piece Written in Stone. So I want to present this to Ms. Dr. Sherrod as my token of appreciation. Okay.
Quickly introduce Mrs. Geraldine West Hudley and Miss Viola Brooks, and let them explain what they're going to do.
As we call the name of the honoree, we'd like for the family members to stand. Femi Anderson. Femi Anderson Way at Resora pays tribute to a young entrepreneur, artist, and a Renaissance woman whom new communities have grown, grow, and flourish. Born October 15, 1971, Femi Elijah Anderson belonged to a generation of black children who witnessed their parents working in support of a common cause known as new communities. Among them was Femi's father, Ed, who organized with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, worked with Charles Sherrod, and along with his then wife, Willa, ran the print shop for both the Southwest Georgia Project and New Communities. Through the eyes of Femi and twin sister Bumi, the relationships and collaborations sowed seeds of self-love, self-reliance, and community uplift. Even after the drought and discriminatory loan practices led to the loss of the farm in Lee County, Femi never forgot what she saw there and how it made her feel. Those childhood memories helped her excel, harness her God-given talents, and explored and expanded opportunities that stood to benefit her community and others. And her life became a testament to it. It's why the life of this artist, this educator, gallerist, and businesswoman serves as a beacon, model, and a reminder of what is possible when we all work together with our children watching. And our ancestors granting us a nod of approval. And so we proudly salute Ms. Femi Elijah Anderson with Femi Anderson Way. God be praised. And Boone.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Together. Like you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Boomie Anderson. And I said I wasn't going to cry. I would say to Femi that even in your absence, you still amaze me. I want to, on behalf of my family, I want to say a couple of things. I want to let Femi's, our pastor, say something because he's dear to her. And thank you for this great honor. Femi loved New Communities, the printing shop, Southwest Georgia Project, and she loved the Sherrods. Ken, Russia, Sherrod, and Shirley, they're our family. Michaela would get Femi to do different projects, help with different designs from several programs. If there are some movement babies here, I saw Sean somewhere. If you what we call movement babies, you mean your parents grew up in the movement, your parents worked in the movement, you grew up around the movement people, if you would stand. Because that was something that we took great pride in. Thank you. Thank you so much. And to the Sherrod Institute, thank you. And on behalf of my family, my daddy is somewhere. Daddy and my mom, would you please stand? Daddy and mama, they're back there. There's my mom, our mom, and our dad. Our aunts. We have a million aunts and uncles, but they all couldn't be here. But if you're an aunt and uncle, you're here. Cousin, please stand. AT&T colleagues, if you're here. Femi loved her AT&T family. And if you're from Rhema Word Cathedral, her church, she loved so much, if you would please stand. From Rhema Word Cathedral. Thank you. And last but not least, talking about coming full circle. When I saw Sean Mulkey up here, where's Sean? I met Sean because of Femi. Sean was Femi's first mentee in how to have art as a business. And he would come up to the office and she would help him to price his work, and to see him doing great things in the Atlanta area as an artist. Femi was a part of that. So that speaks to her spirit and who she was. And thank you so very much. I'm going to yield to Phemi's pastor. And my pastor, by the way.
I just want to say to the Sherrods how I am just honored, absolutely honored that you all continue to allow Dr. Charles Sherrod's spirit to live, because he was his whole concept of life was he was selfless. And for you all to be remembering those who made contributions, no matter how small or large, to this region, to this state, to this nation, is indicative of the spirit that Femi had. And I want to encourage us to continue to be, all the people that we recognize, continue to be selfless in our own fields of expertise. Continue to fight on behalf of our little black boys and our little black girls. This is what today is about. And so I want to say I honor you. Thank you, Bumi. And I honor the Sherrod Institute. I honor you, Ms. Sherrod, because you are keeping the fire of selflessness alive. And so I thank you. God bless you all.
Will the family of Mr. Robert Christian please stand? Resora's Robert Christian Cabin pays homage to one of the most ardent supporters of Charles Sherrod's New Communities and the Community Land Trust model. Robert Christian believed in economic cooperation as an invaluable tool, especially for sharecroppers whose activism could leave them jobless and homeless. Born March 19, 1925, Christian knew what it meant to be black and male in Southwest Georgia. He enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, served in World War II, and was a husband and a father of 9. After an honorable discharge, he made a living repairing radios at Albany's Marine Corps Logistics Base. But what he did off hours spoke volumes about his commitment to the black community. After quitting time and dinner with his family, he headed to New Communities in Lee County. There, he served for years as board treasurer, on the farm committee, and wherever he was needed. In a 1971 interview, Christian made clear he knew the power of New Communities to many. When a person can help plan his destiny, he can better know what he wants out of life. Christian died at age 84 on November 18, 2009, and is buried at Andersonville National Cemetery. And so we proudly salute Mr. Robert Christian. And speaking on his behalf is Mr. Robert Christian.
Auntie, do that too.
Good morning. Mr. Sherrod, I did not intend for this to happen. Somebody else is supposed to give the speech, but I'll do it. I think we all heard about, if I knew then what I know now. So I was a little fella when Mrs. Sherrod, Daddy, and Todd Sherrod, I grew up hearing Todd and Shirley Sherrod. I grew up hearing that name. But it wasn't until I got older that I knew what my dad and Shirley and Todd was all involved in. So to come to the today, I know Daddy would have been proud. I know he would have been skinning and grinning. He would have had his hand on his hip, you know, and he would give thanks to everybody. I kind of left home early, so I didn't have a chance to spend a whole lot of time as a grown man with my dad. Boy, I really wish I could have. Thank you.
Edward Ed Fever and family, please stand. Ed Fever Way at Resora pays homage to a seminary student who dedicated decades of his life in support of the organizing work of Reverend Charles and Mrs. Shirley Sherrod. Born on July 20th, 1942 in Laramie, Wyoming, Ed moved at age 5 with his family to Norman, Oklahoma, where his father pastored a local Presbyterian church. After graduating from the University of Oklahoma, Ed followed in his father's footsteps, studying sacred theology at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. He met Reverend Sherrod while there and joined other seminarians who traveled to Southwest Georgia in support of the civil rights leaders' organizing work. After completing his degree in 1968, he returned to Georgia, helping with administrative tasks, working on the farm, and supporting the work wherever they were needed. Since new communities grew from the movement, Fever once said, we participated in its development and contributed what little we could. In the mid-90s, or 80s rather, the Fevers moved to Tallahassee, where he began addressing structural inequities in the delivery of health, rehabilitation, and social services. He was appointed the Secretary of the Florida Department of Children and Families during his tenure. Informed by his years of service in Southwest Georgia, Ed continues to advocate for the vulnerable and underserved. And right now we salute you, Mr. Ed Fever, and excited and happy that you are here with us.
I promise just a few words.
Okay.
I'm at a loss actually, because you've heard about several people this morning already that deserved this honor, and they were all good friends of mine, Mr. Christian and Mr. Gaines. I need to tell you how I ever got involved in this in the first place. Charles Sherrod was a fellow student at Union Seminary when I was there. He was the only black student at Union Seminary when I was there. And the interesting thing is, we all lived in dormitories. And you know, we didn't know each other too much when we first got there. And I would hear this voice singing in the hallways, singing in the bathroom, singing up and down the stairs. And I said, who is that? You know, and I need to find out. I'll find him. It was Sherrod. He was just incredible, because he was himself, so many of us never are. We just sort of do what we do, but we don't let other people know who we are. We don't let other people know what our interests and what our concerns are. Charles was not like that. He let everybody know who he was. And so I got to talking to him, and I knew very little about all the struggles that were going on in the South. Even though I grew up in Oklahoma, I should have known more. But he said, "You're coming to Florida, to Southwest Georgia, and you're going to work with the movement." And I said, "I am?" And he said, "Yes, you are. Not only you, but you're going to bring about 6 or 7 of your other students here to your college to do the same thing." And so he actually started then this effort of getting 4 or 5 seminarians to come to Southwest Georgia to help with the movement for short periods of time. But he didn't let me leave. I will never, ever lose what I learned from Charles. He was just an incredible person. And of course, Shirley was right there. And that made so much of a difference in his life, in my life, in the movement's life. And as you can all see and you all know, it's still going on today. She is just an incredible person and has done such a wonderful job, as you all know. So it's truly an honor. And the other thing that I need to mention, my wife Marilyn, if you'd come forward. Marilyn helped sustain me and keep me here, but she also brought had a connection with students from here that went to Franconia College, where she was a teacher, and they're here today, and they helped me understand what needed to be done here also. But Marilyn was very critical to all of this, and so I just wanted to see if she wanted to say anything.
I'm so glad for this opportunity to share, particularly with the grandchildren and the children of our friends who are being honored today. I'm not sure if you're aware that at one of these late evening meetings, and they went on and on and on in Lee County at your communities, on the way back, Monroe Gaines, Robert Christian, Mrs. Mack, with my husband driving the car, came upon a huge tank truck that had been disabled and not off the road. It was on the road. There were no lights, no warning, and in the rural areas, no lights. It had crashed into the tank. All 4 were seriously injured. They were taken to Phoebe Putney. Ed was triaged last, which meant he had the least chance of surviving, because you take the first person who has survived and give them the aid to enable them to get on with their lives. We were very fortunate that the surgeon on call was Dr. Gordon. I say this because Dr. Gordon had Vietnam service. He knew about battlefield casualties. He knew how to deal with 4 people whose lives were in his hands at that moment. Had it not been Dr. Gordon and some other surgeon there, Ed would not have survived. Our daughter Mary would never have been born. She was born later at Phoebe Putney. But I am so grateful, and we are too, for Dr. Gordon. If anyone knows any of his descendants, I wish you would tell them that they are people who are alive today, because my daughter has 3 children. None of them would be alive today. All for just the chance that a man was there who served and knew how to do the best with the skills. And I want to also, because I would never have been down here, so much of what happens is by chance. I would never have come down here had it not been for 2 students of mine at Franconia. Joanne, are you here? And Pat, are you here? Okay. Pat Gaines and her dad, Monroe Gaines, is being honored today. And Joanne was in my class at Franconia. I was teaching a course in Southern politics using V.O. Key, a Southerner, as his textbooks. And Joanne came to me after class and said, "You don't know what you're talking about." And I said, "What? This is supposed to be the standard book you use if you're teaching Southern politics." And she said, "You don't know what you're talking about. You ought to come down with me." And Pat came in, the 2 of them ganged up on me and said, "You come down during a Christmas break." And I came down during the next Christmas break, and they opened my eyes. And indeed, I didn't know what I was talking about. And so you have a situation where you can learn from your students. And they're having me brought down here, just as Charles, bringing Ed down here, changed the trajectory of our lives. So we're very fortunate to have met these folks, in our point in our lives when it made a difference. They came in to help us, guide us toward where we are today. Thank you.
The Monroe Gaines Cabin at Resora pays tribute to a civil rights vet and longtime board member who gave selflessly to New Communities Incorporated. Monroe Guy Gaines grew up on Mirador Plantation in Dougherty County, aware of what it meant to be black in Southwest Georgia. He served in World War II and Korea, and later worked as a mechanic at Albany's Marine Corps Logistics Base. He belonged to one of the most important civil rights families in Albany. His wife and children marched and went to jail. Anix was the lead plaintiff in the local school desegregation suit, and he opened his own home to Northern activists who came south in support of Sherrod's work. Mr. Gaines knew all too well that activism without economic base was dangerous business. He had, after all, seen people stand up only to lose the roof over their heads and the means to put food on their table. It's the reason he was so passionate about New Communities. It's why he sat on the board, lent his support to all of his initiatives, and played a role wherever he was needed. Even after suffering injuries from an accident on the way to NCI one evening, Gaines remained a fixture and supporter of the farm. Gaines, Uncle Guy as I called him, died on December 15th, 1995, and is buried at 2nd Bethesda Missionary Baptist Church Cemetery off Newton Road. And so we proudly salute Mr. Monroe Guy Gaines. And Marion will come at this time. Marion Gaines Jones.
Good morning. It's a beautiful morning. I am honored to stand before you this morning as the Charles Sherrod Institute pause to recognize our daddy and mother, Lorenza Monroe and Lorenza Gaines. I want to thank Viola, our cousin, and Geraldine, Kenyatta, Russia, Shirley, all of our family members, and all of you who are here today for coming to honor those who have gone before us. Rosa Parks said, "You must never be fearful about what you are doing when it's right." Today, the question is asked, how did we get to this particular day? Well, for the Gaines family, it was all because of Sherrod, Charles Sherrod, who came to Albany, Georgia at the age of 19 with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Joanne and Pat met Sherrod when he came here. He was looking for students to do voter registration. Well, Pat came home and told Daddy about Charles Sherrod. They were out passing out flyers in Monroe High School and other places. She came home excited about Charles Sherrod and what he was doing. So Daddy decided that we would go to that first mass meeting. We went to the mass meetings every Monday night. It was like a religious event for us. Now, Daddy could go to the mass meetings, but he could not march or go to jail. So the rest of the family, we did that, including our mother. And going to jail so many times, one of the times, Medea, and I'm not going to be fancy talking about Monroe and Lorenza, those are our parents I'm talking about. So Medea decided on one of those occasions to close the store and take Peaches with her. Well, we found out that evening that Medea, Joanne's mother, and all of them were down in Camilla. So they called to tell Daddy that we needed to come down and get the baby. Stand up, baby. Where's that baby? There she is. 2 years old in jail. Well, now you know Daddy got to moving real quick because that was his baby. Long story short, Daddy and Sherrod had a connection. Sherrod had a connection with our family and the Christian family. Sherrod was just a jewel. Sherrod was sent by God to Albany, Georgia for such a time back then. Daddy, anything Sherrod needed done, Daddy was willing to do it. Our daddy could not get promoted on base because his family was involved in civil rights. He applied for positions, but never chosen. They wanted him to train a young white guy for the job and experience that he already had. And it was a little disappointing now. So that was one of the times I saw Daddy in a different state. Never gave up on the civil rights movement. never gave up on the dream that Sherrod had for Southwest Georgia. Daddy, in that accident that Marilyn talked about, Ed Fever, I remember getting that call that night because we were at the store, our grocery store, my mother and I. We get a call from our cousin Alton telling us that Daddy had been in a very serious accident. Well, I panicked, so he says, give Aunt Lorenza the telephone. I gave Mother the telephone, and Mother said to me, we got to go to the hospital. I was driving to the hospital. When we got to Oglethorpe and Jefferson, all the lights stopped. And when I saw the police leading Dr. Gordon to the hospital, I knew it was something serious. Mother said, don't panic, we've got to get there. Lo and behold, when we arrived, all of our relatives were already there. Thank you, Gaines family. All I saw was bloody sheets, nurses and doctors moving. Dr. Gordon had them jumping out there. And all we saw was bloody sheets. Ed's head was split. They had Ed, I wouldn't go in that intensive care. It was just too much for me to bear. They had his head in that, what do you call it at the hospital? That halo. And I opened the door just enough to look at my daddy laying there. Daddy was out of work 9 months. C.B. King was always our civil rights lawyer. He represented Daddy, he and Howell doing the integration of schools. Shirley Gaines, our oldest sister who's deceased. Shirley Gaines versus Doherty County Board of Education. And naturally, they won that suit. Now, integration wasn't about us going to white schools. It was just about us being treated equal. We would always get hand-me-down books, hand-me-down everything from the white schools. We went to Albany High, had the best of everything, y'all. They had everything over to Albany High School. First edition books, the brand new desk, the best of food, you made choices. It was just a different world. We had a hard time over there. Next thing Daddy did, when that incident occurred, C.B. King was again our lawyer representing the family. When Daddy received that money, Shirley and Sherrod was trying to save that land. Lester Maddox wouldn't let him have any. He was the governor back then. So as Shirley had said, and she says it over and over, the struggle they had in trying to save that land. Well, Daddy, being the man that he was, he gave up monies to try and help save that land. He did 2 things with that money he received. Gave money to help save the land, and then paid for Pat's wedding. Those are the 2 things he did. Daddy had a love for had a love for God, love for family, love for God's people. And I'm so grateful to be standing here in my parents' stead. And I hadn't cried in a long time. But they gave their lives for civil rights. For us to be able to be free, to be equal, to be treated equally. And they were always concerned about the least of these, even in the grocery store, and it was always giving away food. I can understand how Medea, people could come in the store, I was the accountant, come in the store, credit all month, end of the month, they pay on their bills, and they'll turn around and buy groceries. My mother never said anything. They were always giving. I'm saying to myself, Medea, how you do that? We need some money too. Never said a mama word. Daddy was always driving folk back and forth to church, Sunday school, union. Never would take a penny. These were the kind of parents we had, and today we stand on the shoulders of our parents. We thank God for them. We thank God for all of you and all of our family members. My sisters, Patricia, stand up. She was one of the students up in New York raising monies for us to be able to come to the March on Washington. I was 11 years old. James Zena, Joanne, all of them, we went on our bus, a yellow old school bus, took us all the way, part of the way rather, to Washington, D.C. I found out later that some went on Amtrak. Our bus broke down in the backwoods of South Carolina, y'all. Not a light in sight, but Sherrod was on the bus with us, and Sherrod was not afraid of anything or anybody. He just had that spirit and a spirit of boldness, and only God can give you that. Sherrod got off that bus, he and Eddie Brown walking to find someone to help fix that bus. Got a white man, no signs of lights nowhere on that dark road. We didn't even have a sense enough to be afraid. We talked about it last night and laughed about it, but back then it wasn't funny. That bus broke down, and we were freedom riders in the backwoods of South Carolina. They got off that bus and walked to find someone to go and come back. And that white man couldn't fix it, so they got somebody else. We arrived in Washington, D.C. the next morning for the March on Washington with the I Have a Dream speech. And I'm just so grateful. There's so much to be told. I can't tell it all. I'd love to. But I thank them for extending me a minute because they know we have a history to tell y'all. And all of it hadn't been told yet. And we're going to tell the truth about all of it. We're going to get together and do just that. To God be the glory for Shirley and all of them and everything that you're doing and that we're going to do to move the movement forward together. Peace.
And we are certainly grateful that all of you are here. C.B. King Court at Resora pays tribute to a legendary black lawyer who broke the color line, defended scores of civil rights demonstrators, and used the law to redefine what it meant to be black in Southwest Georgia. Born October 12, 1923, Shadeen Bowers King was the third of 7 remarkable sons of Margaret and businessman C.W. King, who were early patrons of Charles Sherrod's activism and voter registration work. Attorney King was the first black to practice south of Atlanta, and he was just everybody's lawyer. He defended countless demonstrators who Sherrod inspired to stand up. He advocated for the powerless in a system rigged against them. He was the most powerful weapon that blacks in South Georgia had, especially those caught in the crosshairs of hostile southern courtrooms. Armed with the mastery of the law and the English language, he forced judges to run to their chambers in search of dictionaries and case law. And his refusal to back down made him a target always. Death threats were phoned in. Driver's seats were soaked with acid in hopes that he'd lose control behind the wheel. And of course, a walking cane was used to split open his scalp. Some of us have seen the picture. Still, he remained an asset to the Black Georgians. It's why they drafted him as their first to run for Congress in 1964 and their first to run for governor in 1970. In January of that same year, he also served as the lawyer of record in the purchase of new communities, whose first president was his late brother, Slater King. CB died on March 15th in 1988 in Tijuana, Mexico, where he was undergoing treatment. 14 years later, in 2002, he became the first Black to have a federal courthouse named for him in the former Jim Crow South. And so we proudly salute Attorney C.B. King. God be praised, and with his family representative, please come. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Good morning. For those who don't know, my name is Sherrod King III. I'm C.B. King's grandson. It's an honor to be here. I'm sorry. Is that better? Yes. Okay. I'm honored to be here this morning with my family on a special occasion to say a few words about my grandfather. Everybody remembered him as this legal giant, a stoic figure, extensive vocabulary, deep voice, powerful. But I'm also here to tell you that I have fond memories of him as being a lighthearted, caring individual about family as well. I was only 6 years old when he passed away, but I do have a memory I'd like to share with you that I carry with me every day. There was an occasion we went to our grandparents' house, my parents and I, and it was for a family gathering. And as usual, my grandmother, Carol King, who's hosting and cooking and having friends and family over. We were early, and so I'm the first to walk in the door, and I immediately see my grandfather. He sees me, and with a big grin on his face, in a baritone voice, he says, "Vini Staggerini." For those who remember me as a child, and Vini was my name. But at the time, I didn't really know what it meant. But I didn't care. It was personal. And it meant a lot to me, and it was for me. And that didn't always happen when you had three Sherrods in the room. So I'm appreciative of that. As a real estate professional in the Atlanta area now, I share the passion, I think, for my grandfather and his brother, Slater King, when it came to land ownership and real estate. And I think their understanding of the economic empowerment for people like us is part of the reason we're here to share their contributions, and I'm thankful for that. And to the Sherrods, Shirley, who's here, and to her husband, thank you for continuing to carry the vision for new communities for over a century, half a century, I'm sorry. And I'm so thankful that you have honored my family's legacy on these sacred grounds. So just wanted to keep it short, but thank you very much. Also, I'm here with my three ladies. I just want to recognize them, my partner Amber and my two daughters, Chase Bowers King and Camden Bella King, along with other families. Thank you.
Slater King's family, please stand. The Slater King Cabin at Resora pays tribute to civil rights leader and real estate broker who served as a visionary, a leading voice, and the first president in what became New Communities. Slater Hunter King was born October 17, 1927, the fourth of 7 sons of Margaret and C.W. King, and the younger brother of attorney C.B. King. A 1946 Fisk graduate, Slater followed in his father's footsteps, selling real estate and insurance policies. In the fall of 1961, he met and began organizing with Reverend Sherrod, first as vice president and later president of the Albany movement. Like his brother C.B. and Sherrod himself, Slater paid a heavy price for standing up. There were the death threats. He lost a child after police assaulted his pregnant wife, Marion. And the Kennedy Justice Department prosecuted him as a member of the Albany Nine. Still, he claimed faith over fear, announcing his candidacy for mayor of Albany in 1963, becoming the first black to do so. 5 years later, Slater traveled abroad with 6 others, including Sherrod, to study community-held land models. They returned with a vision to start a new community for people who had lost their jobs and homes due to their activism. He was appointed New Community's first president, who was charged with identifying land and managing the purchase. But on March 6, 1969, head-on collision claimed Slater's life at the age of 41. Despite this profound loss, New Community's board regrouped and selected Sherrod to finish what they had started. And so we proudly salute Mr. Slater King. Dr. Edward King, would you please come forward?
Thanks a lot. This is a great honor that you're honoring my father. Both I and my entire family are consider it a great honor. As was said, my dad was born here in Albany in 1927, and other than attending Fisk University, where he got a degree in economics back in 1946, he lives in South Georgia all of his life. My grandparents were independent small business owners and owned a local grocery store, a women's clothing store, and a restaurant in Albany. And my dad initially worked in my grandfather's grocery store before opening a real estate firm with my grandfather that they named King & King. My father was one of the first black insurance salesmen for Aetna in the Deep South. Being an independent businessman with a largely black clientele made him immune from the economic pressures placed on individuals who took a leadership role in the fight for civil rights. I mean, as was said, there's a great documentary, I think it was called The Arc of Justice, about New Communities. And it was stunning to see Charles Sherrod say that he would go talk to sharecroppers about being registered to vote. As soon as they did so, they would get kicked off the land, And so there was one of my dad's best friends, Emmanuel Bo Jackson, I think at the time was working at Albany State University. He was fired because of his activism. There are numerous students at Albany State University, like Bernice Reagan Johnson, kicked out of school once they got arrested. And so she wound up had to leave and wound up getting her degree at Spelman. So they're only folks who had their own businesses and depended on other black folk for their income could take a leadership role. So my uncle CB and my dad opened a combined law firm and real estate firm in Albany in the late 1960s. And my grandfather, Clinton King, was one of the founding members of a local NAACP chapter in Albany in the 1920s. My dad was active in the Albany movement, like as was said. He was initially vice president of the movement. Dr. William Anderson stepped down and he became president. And my parents paid for their activism. As was said, my mother, who was 6 months pregnant and carrying my older sister, who who at the time was only three years old, was beaten by police officers in Camilla, Georgia, and knocked unconscious. She later miscarried, and to this day, no one's been held responsible, and even no apology, even from the folks down in Camilla. And many in the Albany movement, as was said, the Albany Nine, including my father, were charged with conspiring to obstruct justice. What they did, they tried to organize boycotts of white businesses where they were frequented by black customers, though they refused to hire black workers. And he was indicted by the federal government, but later the charges, I guess he beat the charges. So my father was also involved in socioeconomic development and recognized that the limited housing availability for black citizens in southwest Georgia. So he obtained loans and grants from the federal government, the city of Albany, and private investors to develop low-income housing and church-sponsored housing units in South Georgia. So he tragically died in an automobile accident in 1969 in Dawson, Georgia. In the months before his death, he traveled to Israel in 1969 with the Sherrods, my mom and my dad, and to examine how farm cooperatives and land trust work. And that's how the new communities were structured. So interesting, ironically, about 18 months ago, I got a cold call. My staff said, hey, some historian wants to talk to you. And it was a woman named Dr. Ansley Kuros from University of North Alabama in Florence. And what she was looking for, she's written a book that examined the struggle over race and Christian theology in Americus, Georgia, during the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And she said, right now I'm working on a book on Shirley and Charles Sherrod. And so she wanted information about that 1969 trip. So I was taken aback when she said, she talked about my dad, and she just said, look, he was an independent businessman. He could have led a quiet life, indifferent to the racial discrimination and dire poverty of other African American citizens of South Georgia, but he chose not to, and she was really impressed by that. So again, it's a great honor, and I really thank you for it.
Mrs. Rosemary Mack. Family, please stand. The Rosemary Mack Cabin at Resora pays tribute to the Lee County native who fought to improve the lives of black folk and to ensure they understood that with land comes power. When it came to Rosemary Mack, few were as loyal to the movement, to Reverend Charles Sherrod, and to what became at that time the largest black landholding in America. Mack was born in 1915, 1 year before 5 black men were lynched in her native Lee County, 10 miles from the Red Bone district she called home. A lifetime member and secretary of nearby Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church, she became a wife, mother, and engaged in causes that would advance her people. She joined the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, supported the organizing muscle of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and seldom showed up to mass meetings without her children. In 1963, she traveled to the March on Washington, joined the Southwest Georgia Project in '66, and rallied around the vision aimed at protecting would-be voters who ran the risk of losing their jobs and homes. New communities ignited in Miss Mack a dedication to ensure black folk saw the power of community-based landholding. She was crystal clear on the threat this near 6,000-acre farm posed to the powers that be. With all this land, she once said, there will be a time that we won't have to beg. And they know that. And they don't know that. Mrs. Mack died November 1997 in Palm Beach, Florida. And don't you know we proudly salute her today? That one is Rosemary Mack. And the family representative who will be speaking, won't you please join me?
Good morning. Oh, I'm glad I didn't have advance notice that I would be doing this, because I probably would have spent quite a bit of time trying to say the right things, because my grandmother was such a powerful woman. As a child, I didn't quite realize it, and I thank you, Lord, for this day, for this moment, this very second that was predestined to be. We, the family, have traveled far. I live in Detroit now. I have family here from Florida, from North Carolina, because we could not be here, because she was always there for us. I was one of the ones that was always at those mass meetings. I can't say that I understood what was going on. My sisters and I would try to get where she couldn't see us and play. But we were all somehow changed just by her mere presence. As you've heard, some people allude to Lee County was not, and probably still is not, the nicest place, the most accommodating place for African Americans, Black people. And I remember a conversation that she was having with Mr. Sherrod about it was time for the schools in Lee County to be integrated. So we're sitting doing whatever, not really paying attention. And then I heard her say, my granddaughter Linda, me, would be in that first group of children. I didn't realize exactly what that meant at the time. You know, people kept saying, you go into the white school. I was like, why? I don't want to. But I remember her support. It was not an easy thing. I was in 6th grade. It was not a pleasant thing. And if I think about it in the negative terms, I would say I had a really bad experience in middle school, because there were like 1 or 2 of us in each grade, and we were not treated the best, but for some reason, I got up and we made it. We went every day. We were supported. And we stand on the shoulders of my grandmother today, Rosemary, and her middle name is Merry. And most people would say that she was a nice, strong, and I remember one time her having this gun on her, this rifle on her shoulder. I can't remember where she was going, and somebody came, one of those white landowners around, whatever, and she said, Mr. Jack, it was Jack Garrett, was his name, Mr. Jack, whatever she was saying, and she did not back down. They called her Miss Rosie back in the 60s. The white people called her Miss this and Miss that, Miss Rose, Miss Mac, Miss. And I always wondered why. It's because she stood up, she said what she said, and she said what she said. And she meant what she said. So we are so honored here. Family wave. You see her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren here today. And we just want to say thank you to the Sherrods. I remember that accident night so vividly, because my first memory is Mr. Sherrod arrived at our home in Lee County, and he was like, and we were young, and I didn't understand, even when he said there's been a terrible accident, whatever, and I came to check on you guys, because we were all young. My mother wasn't home at the time, and he was like, but it's going to be all right. And I just remember his voice, and it's like, it's going to be all right. And it did turn out to be all right, but for a while it didn't look so promising. Thank you again. As I said, I wasn't prepared. I didn't know what I was going to say when I just found out I was coming up here, but I just want to say that I stand, and we all stand, on some powerful shoulders. And it just today, so many memories of all those meetings and all, and I didn't understand at the time, but I want to say to you that have children and grandchildren, even if they don't want to or they don't understand, do what you got to do, because that scripture that says raise up a child in the way, it is just so utterly true. Like one of the passages for our young people in our family is when you get a certain age and you can register, that like get a driver's license, registration to vote is mandatory. No question. So I thank you again, and everyone be blessed. And I really appreciate the Sherrod family and the rest of the people that knew what we knew about my grandmother. Thank you. I don't have much to add to this, but I do appreciate everything that went on. My grandmother had values and things that she insisted, like whatever, you would go to register to vote. And not just us, any black kid, any black adult, any black in Lee County was going to vote. They was going to register if she had to go get them and drag them down into the poll by the hand. She demanded that. Family, church, which was first, and education. She believed in education. Every one of us has had more than a high school education. So she believed in education. And that accident, I remember months of her picking glass out of her face. Months after the hospital and all this. She spent months getting that glass out of her face. I want to thank you all for what you all has done for us. And we miss her. And we thank you.
And please be reminded, if you live in Dorter County, early voting has started. And it's at the Candy Room on Pine. Harrison Miller. Family members, please stand. The Uncle Harrison Miller Vineyard at Resora pays tribute to the Baker County native who brought his education, experience, and A-game to new communities as its first farm manager. Born March 1st, 1924, Harrison Miller grew up 9 miles outside of Newton, where his sharecropping family pulled together to purchase their own land, now known as Hawkinstown. During World War II, he was a part of the Red Ball Express, was in Normandy for D-Day and Germany for the Battle of the Bulge. After being discharged, Miller graduated from Savannah State, where he joined the NAACP. He then landed a job as an extension agent above Columbus in Harris County. In all, he spent 23 years working behind the scenes in a rigged system clearly designed to dispossess black farmers from their land. A firm believer in black farmers working together, Miller became a driving force in the creation of the West Georgia Farmers Cooperative. In the 1970s, he returned home to Southwest Georgia to share his expertise with the nation's first community land trust. This uncle of Shirley Sherrod served as a trusted advisor to her and her husband, improved yields at new communities, and accessed markets for its produce. No question that the farm's muscadine vineyard was a guilty pleasure. A lifelong learner, he even found time to earn a law degree. In 1996, he and his wife moved to Memphis near their daughter. He died on July 20th, 2014 at the age of 90. And so we proudly salute Uncle Harrison Miller, I'm going to say Vineyard. Will Attorney Harriet Hallman come?
Good morning. I am just so happy to be here, and I would like to thank the Sherrod Institute for honoring my father. As everybody in here who knows him would know, he would be so happy about this. My father loved his darling niece, Anne, as she is known at home, Shirley. And so he was a little bit skeptical when she told him that she was marrying a guy whose only job was freedom riding. There was much discussion in the family about that. However, he came to love Sherrod as a son. And it was his time at New Community where he bought into Sherrod's vision for that and for what we have here today. And he came to love New Communities and all the people who were associated with New Communities, including all the ones who have been called out here today. I know all of them because of the stories that he told. There were two young men, though, who worked at New Communities, who he really came to love. Kenneth and Stanley. He talked about them every single day that he got home. And he would get so frustrated with them because he didn't think they were working hard enough. You know, he would find them in the truck taking a little break, and he didn't believe in breaks because when he grew up down in Baker County, you know, you worked all day in the field. Well, they took a trip to Florida. Everybody from New Communities had a retreat in Florida, and he and my mother were driving in a car alone. They had a flat tire, pulled over, and some white guys did what white guys would do in that time, came upon them and started harassing them. And I said, well, were you worried? He said, no, I was not worried because I knew who was coming along behind me. And lo and behold, Kenneth and Stanley pulled up. And I said, oh, then did Kenneth and Stanley change the tire? He said, no, they made the white guys change the tire. And the white guys thanked me for the opportunity to change the tire. It is most appropriate that the vineyard would be named after him. He had a passion for growing grapes. And if he were here, he would have you making wine out of those grapes as well. I would like my two daughters who are here to stand, Dr. Camila Hallman and Tana Hallman, who is in education. I have one other daughter who is an executive producer of a TV news station. She can't ever be away from the news, so she couldn't be here today. Again, thank you so much for this honor. It is such a wonderful day, and I am so thankful for it. Thank you.
Aunt Josie Spanley, please sing. Aunt Josie Miller's house at Resora salutes the fearless Baker County woman who promoted black voter registration, combated injustice, and saved the life of Reverend Charles Sherrod during a brutal mob attack. Born June 22nd, 1919, Josie Broadwater married Walter Miller, the uncle of Shirley Sherrod. A member of Thankful Baptist Church, Miller never backed down from Jim Crow. She registered to vote, told a congressional committee about police abuse in Bad Baker, and protested in front of the U.S. Justice Department in D.C. Nothing, however, spoke more clearly about her courage than when she placed herself in harm's way to defend her niece's husband. As an angry white mob in Newton, Georgia, proceeded to beat Reverend Charles Sherrod with wooden axe handles, Aunt Josie ran and threw her body over the civil rights leader. What Aunt Josie was saying, said niece Shirley Sherrod, is you want to kill him, you have to kill me first. That forced the mob to walk away, she said. Aunt Josie spent the rest of her life continuing to combat racism wherever she saw it. On July 24, 2010, this wife, this mother, died at the age of 91. And so with a hallelujah and a shout, we proudly salute Aunt Josie. And with the representative who's speaking, please join us here.
I'm Joseph Broadwater. I'm Joseph's sister. And she's my sister. We were, Josie and I were, we were decades apart, maybe 30 years apart. So Rita is actually my great niece, believe it or not. She's back in the late 1990s. We connected a lot. I would drive down from Atlanta to Baker County and visit her. And I'm really, forgive me, a little bit emotional. But she would tell me stories about our dad, Joseph Broadwater. And these stories happened long before I was born, probably in maybe the 1930s, 1940s. But apparently there were chain gangs, and these were just another legal form of slavery, where black people were improperly imprisoned and forced to work on farms. And apparently there was one such chain gang that was not too far from where my father lived. And these black prisoners knew that if they could escape the chain gang, they knew that if they could make it to our dad's home, he would help them to escape. He would break their chains and drive them out of the county. So this is where she got her foundation, I believe, for fighting for civil rights. Thank you.
Wow.
Good morning. Is it afternoon? Okay. Okay. I am Sherrod Calhoun, Angela Sherrod Calhoun, and I am one of the grandchildren of Josie Broadwater Miller. I am the daughter of Betty Jean Miller Calhoun, who is here today. And I'm here to tell you what this renaming ceremony means to the Josie Miller family. So today we gather to honor a phenomenal, strong, caring, gracious, loving, intelligent Black woman, a mother, our grandmother. Grandma Josie made an indelible mark on the world, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire us all. Our grandmother was a devoted wife, demonstrating unwavering loyalty and profound love for her husband, our granddaddy, Walter, who preceded her in death. Their partnership was an inspiration to others. Our grandmother courageously fought for civil rights, making a difference so that her family wouldn't have to endure the same struggles. Her dedication and bravery paved the way for future generations. In 2005, our grandmother was honored and inducted into the Hall of Fame for the Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative for Economic and Social Justice, resulting from the courage that she demonstrated when she used her own body as a shield to protect and save the lives of 2 civil rights activists. One of those men was our very own Charles Sherrod. Our grandmother was a loving caregiver for her own mother and sister before they passed, and she did so with dignity and grace. Grandma Josie automatically became an extended mother to all of her grandchildren. She showered us with love, affection, guidance, lots of humor, laughter, family gatherings, really good food, and the very best, and I mean the very best, fried chicken. Our grandmother was a smart businesswoman. She owned and managed several rental houses. Her entrepreneurial spirit serves as a testament to her strength and determination. Our grandmother remained persistent in her beliefs. She believed in family and never gave up on any one of us. We live a life of love as we were taught by the matriarch of our family. Grandma Josie taught us the most important skill to life, and that's love. We learn to love others, and through our own individual experiences in this journey that is called life, we learn to love ourselves. I want to share 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. This is the New Living Translation. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of wrongdoing, of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. When I read that, that reminds me of my grandmother. And I can tell you all, when I was pregnant with my twins, I went into labor, and when I came out of recovery, I remember seeing my grandma, Josie, and my Uncle David. They were standing there when they were wheeling me to my room. Once they knew that I was safe, they left, and they said, "We're going back." And my uncle was battling brain cancer at the time. And all they wanted to do was just see and know that I had made it out okay. Our grandmother's passion for quilting was infectious. She was a master quilter. She taught us the value of using our hands to create, leaving a legacy of creativity and pride, along with some beautiful quilts that are still keeping us warm today. Being honored by the Resora, where you learn to live off the land through practical skills, is a fitting tribute to our grandmother's memory. It embodies Grandma Josie's spirit of using hands to build a better future. So today, we remember an exceptional woman whose impact on our lives is immeasurable. Our grandmother's legacy of fighting for justice, caring for loved ones, and loving purposefully inspire us all to live with the same passion and integrity. Although the etching of our grandmother's name will be on this monumental sign, Grandma Josie's love is forever etched in our hearts. So on behalf of the Josie Miller family, thank you, and thank you. And know we love you. Will friends and family members of Joe Pfister please stand? Joe Pfister Circle at Resora salutes the seminary student, organizer, and photographer who spent nearly a decade supporting and chronicling the work of Reverend Charles Sherrod. Joseph James Pfister III met Sherrod in 1965 while the two were studying sacred theology at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. Born in Berkeley, California on July 7, 1942, Pfister joined a dozen seminarians who traveled to Southwest Georgia to help Sherrod organize and uplift disenfranchised blacks. Earning his divinity degree in 1969, this son of a dentist dedicated years of his life to the Southwest Georgia movement. Joe was boots on the ground, whether it was racial justice work or promoting voter registration or protecting police abuse. This was my ministry, Pfister said in 2006, to be among the people and help them with what they needed help with. He also managed the print shop, along with colleagues Ed Anderson and Sam Young. But without question, one of his greatest legacies is the body of photographic work he left behind. There were images of protests in Sylvester, Mary Moss Young running for office, and the planning sessions for new communities. With camera in hand, Joe captured the people, places, and events that helped transform the racial and political landscape of Southwest Georgia following Reverend Sherrod's arrival. He risked his own safety to document so that the world would not turn a blind eye to what was taking place. His images are a testament to the power of visual storytelling in the pursuit of justice. Relocating to North Carolina, Joe spent the balance of his life farming, editing, serving as a chaplain at an HIV clinic, and practicing acupuncture. He passed away on July 8, 2013. And so we proudly salute Mr. Joe Pfister.
Bringing up something about Reverend Wells. And for a long time, not taking anything from my granddad and mother, but I thought Reverend Wells was a granddad. Because we had to respect Reverend Wells, no matter how slow Reverend Wells was, no matter whatever Reverend Wells did, no matter how many houses we had to go and pass out leaflets to, we had to be respectful to Reverend Wells and Mama Newsom. So his life was surrounded around love and family. Now, he was a leader. Remember I said, a family-oriented leader. To show you how much leadership was built into him in the beginning, they told me that they built a playhouse. My uncle told me they built a playhouse behind their house. And he said they used to play and have so much fun, jump around and everything. He He said, but one day when he was walking home, and they all came home to play with the playhouse, my daddy had turned it into a church house. So from then on, they had to sing gospel and listen to Daddy do sermons at the playhouse. Because I forgot to tell you that Big Mom told them that after she, did all these things about his face, she told them that y'all will have to listen to him forever. He's gonna be great one day. So they had to listen to him in the church house. Now, he always spoke about people being free. This freedom that you would get. From my understanding, he approached many in the streets when he came to Albany about, do you want to be free? Miss Rutha was one of them. So there were many who he approached like, I can show you how to be free. I asked my dad one day, I said, Daddy, and this was on some of the real bad days. I said, Daddy, we have a new battle now. There's a battle of these gangs in these streets. And I remember people like Mukasa, Willie Ricks, and some of the other, Randy Battle, and some of the other ones who, what we might consider now, and y'all don't get me wrong because I love all my people, but the thug life kind of deal. And so I asked Dad, I said, Daddy, how did you bring in those boys, because they were boys at the time, those boys at that time, how did you get them in to protest? How did you get them in to stay in the fight? He said, baby, you got to find out the one thing they really like. He said, those boys didn't have cars. We bought a car. And he said they took turns in driving the car and picking up the people to take them to the mass meetings. And then it was the girls, of course. But everybody was taught not to mess with the girls during the movement. Didn't mess with the women during the movement. So he was taught family, leadership, and love. That's what we need. That's what I'm trying to do here. There's a lot of other things here, but move people in that you don't even think that they may make it. They might not be the type that you would look at and say, oh, she's a good singer. But she's the best singer in the world. And so that's how my daddy made you feel. I don't care how bad you were. I don't care if you couldn't sing. Now, he couldn't take that. If you couldn't sing, he didn't want you to sing, around him. Now, that's one thing. Music was his thing, so you couldn't be singing off tune. But he saw the best in everybody. He wanted to love everybody, and I mean everybody. Once I saw a newspaper man, excuse my way of describing him, reporter. One time a reporter was at the courthouse, and Daddy was losing an election. And so, me being the girl, the oldest girl, I'm standing there, Daddy trying to, stand up proud and not flinch and not show the cameras or so they could write that he was so sad. So I'm standing there looking at him. And I'm mumbling things. So Daddy gets up and I say, Daddy, don't move. He said, you are moving. And I said, oh, let me leave you alone. I brought that in to say, because I want to make points and I don't want to forget them, but the point is, y'all knew him as nonviolent and easy and sweet. And he was when he wanted to be. But my last whooping, because I can't even say spanking, my last whooping was 13 years old. I can remember it. He beat me, and she let him. And that's the last time I ever got a whooping. On the other hand, this one got whoopings all the time. But he was nonviolent. He was nonviolent and loving, because he loved you afterwards. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to whoop you, Beth. You just got to understand it. I'm thinking I'm hurting. But anyway, there's a scripture that helps me to help you understand some of my daddy. And it is just a little piece of it. And it's Proverbs 16:9. It says, the heart of a man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. The last thing I want to leave you about Charles Melvin Sherrod is he taught others how to love and not hate. Believe in God who has all power, and then believe in themselves and family. He made sure that there was always a deep understanding that no one, and I mean no one, messes with his ice cream, that was vanilla, his woman, which was Shirley Sherrod, his family, that meant every black person and white folks you know that's doing wrong, and the Hawks, the Braves, and the Falcons. I just do one thing. Could I please have the babies of the movement to the front? This just take 1 minute. Come on, Ken. Just 1 second. Just stand up here for 1 second. Just the babies of the movement, please. I'm talking about, not y'all. The baby. The babies that had babies.
You just want to take a picture of? Okay.
Russia, he was not nonviolent. We were in Atlanta for a book signing for Mrs. Sherrod when the book first came out. And there had been threats against her life, because of the book. Then he and I were walking along the hallway in the hotel. We were getting ready to retire from the meeting. Honey, you know what? I said, what's that? I can protect my wife. I said, I know. Well, let me tell you, don't pull out no knife and no gun up in here. I'm just telling you, I can protect my wife. I said, I know it. But I think they got the protection that they need. You just hold your stuff. And when first I came here, he and I were walking along the way one day, and I told him, it was never my intent to set foot on a plantation of any sort. He stopped walking and looked at me and said, what if it's yours? I could not respond then, I still cannot respond to that question. And I've been fighting along out here ever since because of that lady and her work. It's been a joy.
When Daddy finished, we always sung We Shall Overcome. But now you can't sing in any kind of way.
No.
Because you have to get ugly when you sing. You can't sing cute or it won't sound right? So, and when you did We Shall Overcome, you didn't hold hands like this. You had to hold this way so that you Now y'all ready? So this was standing. I'm teaching now. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. You gotta throw your head back. Lord, we shall overcome.
deep in my heart, I do believe. Oh, we shall overcome someday. All right, kids.
All right, so we're going to keep moving with varying it in. We're going to have Mr. Reginald Sweet come in and give a tribute poem.
Good afternoon. I just want to say it's an honor to have been asked to write a dedication piece. I was sitting there telling my wife, I was like, after all that's been said, what else can I say? And so I've done this. I do this. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and this is the second time I performed on this ground. And the only time that I've ever been nervous in doing this is when I have to preach in front of my bishop and speaking here on this ground. So they say when you remember someone's name, it shows a greater connection to whom that person is. And it's something about the way you say a certain name that makes a smile appear from behind the curtains of your soul and dance across your face like a ballerina. They say the quickest way to get put in your place is to mispronounce the name of an angel. And before those vowels can roll off your tongue and bounce off the concrete into your ears, you will be hit with the declaration of, "I'm sorry, sir, that's not my name." Because when you say a person's name, you call them by their character. You call them by the life that they live. You call them by the moments that make you remember the void that was left in the earth when saying their names fell on deaf ears and the sound of response drifted away slowly in the autumn breeze, they say. If you close your eyes and take a deep breath, put your ears to the ground, you can hear the earth whispers names of giants and kings. Kings who ran businesses that reminded black folks what success really looked like while fighting for the civil rights of those who knew they were not being treated right. We named this ground Slater King. Kings who stood in courtrooms and defended the rights of those who looked like him. Kings who were not afraid to march for justice and fight for the right to vote in the same place as everyone else did. Beatings couldn't stop this king. Jailhouse bars could not shake the crown of this king. We named this ground CB King. This ground needs to be mothered, taken care of, given vision to so it can house life and nurture souls. We named this ground Mother Rosemary Mack. This ground is the ground where partners grow, because this ground needs dedication and commitment. It needs sprinkle of love, the fertilizer of responsibility, and the rain of peace. We named this ground Ed Beaver and Joe Feist. This ground needs soldiers. Soldiers who will fight for it like their life depended on it. Soldiers that will help teach women how to farm this ground, because he knows that dirt is just dirt until a woman puts her hands in it. We named this ground Harrison Miller and Monroe Gaines. This ground needs leadership. It desires togetherness, and greatness is its portion. We call this ground Mrs. Josie Broadwater Miller and Robert Christian. This ground is special, full of history and memories, enough to write anthologies that will be read by generations who will come to this ground just to hear the voice of God, just to hear what the voice of God, just to hear what the voice of God really sounds like. This ground needs special love from special people whose names mean love me. Love me like God loves me. Love like God loves the church. Love like the smile that made the sun jealous of her presence. Love like love filling the hands of an angel that drew healing with a pencil and a kaleidoscope of colors, canvases of life that were used to feed the spirit of those who dared to call her friend. Love like her being art as we stare at the beauty that God created with his own hands. She takes up the residency in our memory, never failing to remind us why we love like we love, because she gave like she gave, she taught like she taught, she laughed like she laughed, she served like she served. We can only be so blessed to live like she lived. This ground can't live like it lives without the voice of God, so we call this ground Feeny. So I ask, how can this ground not produce, as we call it by the names that we call it? How can we not remember the way we felt when we repeated the names that changed the way we saw the world? So we sing, say our name until something beautiful is born. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweet. So we're going to have my auntie come up. And, yeah, no, it's like not just a great thing to have aunties like this, but back in the day they used to spank too, so. Or pinch. Because Ruth had a mean pinch, but we're going to talk about that.
Oh my. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home, a long way from home, way in the water, way in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Come on and wade in the water. Come on, sing with me. Wade God's gonna trouble the water. Well, who's that yonder dressed in white? God's gonna trouble. Yeah, yeah. Well, it looks like the children fighting for